Welcome to Conversations with Shlomi. Hi, I'm Shlomi, your host. I've discovered that vulnerable conversations lead to some of my richest insights and personal growth experiences. So join me as I sit down with guests who inspire me, and let's explore our ups, downs, and everything in between.
Enjoy listening.
Test your mics. Test.
1, 4, 5, 6.
Test. Sounds good. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Shlomo Rappoport. Today I have the big privilege of sitting with my two brothers. My oldest brother, David Chili Rappoport, as we call him in the family, and with my second brother, Israel, little brother. I'm not going to define him, but I admire him as well deeply, and myself, Shlomi. And I think just as an opening question for each of us to introduce ourselves, I think we're holding each one in our own ways, in some ways, at an interesting crossroads in our life, or at a certain state in our life. And I guess the question is, how would you introduce yourself? Like, who are you today? Like, what are you busy with? If somebody were to ask you, hey, and I guess we'll start with you, David, introduce yourself. What are you today?
Well, I'm tempted to give you my life story, but I won't, because it's not relevant for who I am today necessarily, unless we hold on to who we were and what we experienced in the past. And sometimes we can learn from that, and sometimes we can get inspired by that. But ultimately, really who we are today is who we are today. So what I would say is that I'm currently in a state of looking for flow, which means that I have lived a large part of my life trying to be very planned and controlled, outcome-oriented, not allowing myself to deviate a lot from pre-planned purposes. And at this point, I am looking to introduce the element of flow into my life and to open myself up to serendipity, to chance encounters, to unexpected avenues of growth. And as a result, I would say it's actually really hard for me to give you a static answer to the question, who am I? But I could say that I'm a person who is currently looking to grow and looking to learn, looking to share what I've learned, and looking to be possibly completely transformed and changed by any one experience or many experiences that occur without planning.
Okay, before we hop over to you, Israel, I just want to, what do you mean flow? Define what flow means for you.
Flow means that you're like water, and when something happens in your way, you just flow with it and around it. You're not pushing the stone aside to make way, but you adjust a lot to what's happening around you. You welcome it, you don't fight it, you absorb it, you let yourself be touched, you let yourself be changed.
So if I were to sum it up, like a lot of your life has been defined by rigidity and being a part of a system. So you're really embracing currently what the lack of thereof brings to you and what it feels like and where it takes you to.
I think that's fair.
All right, cool. What about you, Israel? Bring
Well,
it on, lay it on us.
I definitely can relate to some of the things that you've mentioned over there, Philly. That's an interesting question. I mean, the first thing that popped into my head when you asked that question is that I would describe myself right now probably as the curious case of Benjamin Button. In some way, I feel like I'm living my life backwards. I think I used to have all the answers. And as I'm getting older, I feel like I have less and less of the answers and more of the questions. It's been definitely very humbling. And I think as I'm getting older, I am more ready to learn from others than tell others. You know, I have a very high level of confidence usually in my statements, whether they're right or wrong. But, you know, I think the world is moving at such a fast pace that in many ways the younger generation is living a completely different life. And I think so in many ways I feel like I'm being left behind. Not something that bothers me every day. I'm kind of happy that I'm not part of this new world, that I sort of like lived a good chunk of my life when the world was still a little bit slower, a little bit simpler. But I definitely think that I have more to learn from others now than I have things to give. How about you, Shlomi?
1 second, let me just. You've also found yourself that Ezo Chachma Lemid Mikol Adam, like really being more open, and as but I'm putting my own words to your experience. But I think what I've heard you say is, I realize that the less secure I am, or the less sure I am of my opinions, the more I can actually learn from other people in some ways also. And I'm not sure much of what things are moving so fast and so quickly, and you're feeling like you're losing a little bit the grip on that generation and what they're doing, but you're also quite happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not humble bragging over here. I'm not trying to say that now I'm also humble as well. No, I really do think that.
We'll decide. We'll get there.
No, I really think that there's a whole new world brewing in almost everything. The way the younger generation looks at things, the tools that they have available, the tools that they're using, what humanity means, the bridge between humans and technology. It's everything. And I really don't know that I can wrap my head around it. Again, I think there's some way I'm enjoying that.
Yeah.
But
I want to bring it back to me, because in general I like to do that. Just myself also, I've been entering the mental health space more and more, and become more, I guess, identified with the role of being a therapist or in the helping space. And to me, I think that conversation, the topic that you just preached, what is that? What is the human interaction? What does therapy? What does anything?
is it broached?
Broached. Thank you. Yes, thank you. But don't make me lose my train of thought. But the idea that what does human interaction connection mean going forward is, I think, something we're going to have to talk about here. And I want to begin maybe with you, because you just interviewed our father.
Was you?
David, thank you. Yes, I want to begin with David. How do you want me to call you here?
Call me Chili.
You just interviewed Papi in Switzerland, our father, and talked a little bit about that subject of generational, how our generation sees ideas, accepts failure. I think you broached all of that and broached all of that. This is on your mind, and it's definitely on my mind as a therapist, what it all means. So let's begin. How was that? Interviewing Puppy, hearing him talking about times that were more even nostalgic to us, or foreign to us, and yet being now in a world where things are accelerating by the minute. What was that experience like?
If you're asking about the experience of interviewing our father, I would say that it was nice. Our father lived through very interesting times. The revolution we're experiencing today started with the computer revolution. When he graduated, I think he was the first class that graduated in the computer science department in Brooklyn College. So I think he lived the first part of the revolution, which was very fascinating, but not nearly as fast as what's happening today. I think today, every day you open up whatever app you use to follow the news, and you read about another breakthrough, and it's happening faster and faster, and it's really overwhelming. And the changes that we're experiencing today are truly scary. Like, they truly scare older people and younger people. They are also extremely exciting, but they're also truly mind-boggling and scary. Like, we used to be able to think of computers as something that we control, that can do certain very specific things a lot faster than a human, but we always had complete control over them. And now we're entering an age where the future becomes completely unpredictable. And even during those few days when I was spending time with my parents in Zurich, we were interacting with some of those tools like ChatGPT, and getting answers to questions that just boggled the mind, how good they were, how to the point they were, how they used the language, and it's getting so fast. So it's getting better so fast, and it's getting so good so fast that it really kind of creates a lot of uncertainty. And I think that's the difference between what our father went through, which was a very exciting time, and what we're going through, which is a very unsettling time. And I think it's very unsettling for our children and for the younger generation, because they really have no clue what the future is going to look like. I think when I was a kid, we were asked to write an essay about the future, and we all were very excited about that future. It was so exciting to think about high-speed travel, high-speed communication. A lot of the things we thought about happened, and now I can't say that I don't know anybody who is unreservedly excited about what's happening. So it's very confusing, I think. And that's a very interesting thing. I think the topic we touched upon a lot with my father is that he held on to a lot of his beliefs, his religious beliefs, his values through all these changes. I think that was what gave him an anchor, and I think it's going to be even more important going forward as the world around us becomes less and less intelligible, predictable, and controllable, that we find our internal anchors that give us a sense of self, a sense of peace, a sense of security, and a sense of meaning.
I turn to you because I think a few weeks ago Israel. Thank you for reminding me that I'm speaking to a mic and not everyone sees me as I see you, and you sees like me, sees you as a human being. I know you spoke a couple of weeks ago at one of the companies you're a little bit involved in. I think it's called Careco, and very much involved in the AI space. Sorry for the quick interruption there, but so you spoke a couple of weeks ago at Careco Israel. You spoke at the Careco with some of the co-founders or founders of Careco, and you were speaking specifically about AI. And just for background information, Careco is a company that actually uses AI tools, but really helps. And I'm going to let you speak more to it, but they uses AI tools, but with the interaction of the human to further the care for patients, for chronically ill patients. I'm curious, thoughts specifically to the idea that Chili had mentioned, where in our days when we went to the Fera or to one of those shows that had all the latest technologies, we were super excited. And the truth is that today it's a lot more uncertain and a lot more anxiety inducing. Can you speak to that and also other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, now we were having a conversation. So there's this podcast of a company that I'm involved in. It's called Building Careco. It's basically a founders podcast, a weekly podcast where they have a weekly conversation about that week's trial and tribulations in the company and different things that they're going through. And the CTO had a baby, his wife gave birth. So one week I filled in and we were having a conversation. Again, this is where my somewhat newfound identity of having more questions than answers, I think speaking to that uncertainty that Chili mentioned before, and the biggest uncertainty is that today, anybody building a new company, they need to use the latest tools out there. They need to use AI. But you don't know if whatever you're doing this week is going to be completely superseded by something else next week. And that is a very, very difficult. Most people don't even realize that, even the founders and even the people building, because when you're building a company, you need to have some sort of foolishness to you, because otherwise you can't do it. But, you work and you have programmers and you make partnerships and you're building all kinds of tools. And then, we just had this with DeepSeek, this Chinese company that came out of nowhere and said, hey, I know that you gave us none of the technology to build a large language model, but look what we did, what we just did. And whether they did have access or they didn't, but this every at least once or twice a week, there is earth-shattering news from somewhere in the world that completely upends at least, probably thousands of startups or thousands of ideas, thousands of things that people are pursuing. But at the same time, you can't stand still. You need to continuously push forward. But there's going to be a moment where we probably don't have that much left to contribute as humans. And the question is, when will that happen, in what format, and what it's going to look like? I mean, again, this all sounded pretty bleak. I will say that the one thing that I feel pretty good about is there's another company that I'm involved in that does telemedicine for third world countries. And so they basically have these doctor toolkits that they send out to these remote clinics, sometimes in the jungles, etc., and where usually doctors cannot get to. And they do this remote diagnostics where the people have now access to medicine. But more than that, because of the advent of AI and large data analysis models, and they're able to view these things completely differently. You know, when you have a disease that happens in some jungle in Panama, for example, and there's really no study about it right now. There's very little that is known that would even point you to some sort of an issue because it's not an important enough, it's not a studied enough part of medicine. The way these things worked and still work until today is that you would have a doctor that would travel out there maybe once a month and just see as many people as possible. Some of those villagers would walk for days to see that doctor and either get to him or not. And now with all these new tools, the data collection. So having said what I said earlier, I definitely feel that if the more data that you can build on individual subsets of anything, whether it's a subset of society, whether it's a subset of some sort of chemical research or anything like that, that will carry value for quite a while. Because it definitely seems that one of the potential drawbacks from the large language models like Google and the really big players, the ones that are investing hundreds of billions of dollars, is that they need to kind of be everything to everybody, and they're dumping data, and then you're extracting data, which is pretty good. But what if that data is super, super specific? I want to know what is the risk factor for someone living in Brooklyn exposed to this type of traffic? And I think there's always a little bit of a risk if you have too much data that you're gonna also create a little bit of a messiness of data. So there's definitely short term, at least I think there's an opportunity there to bring that. But I think you're in many ways, Shlomi, in one of the most interesting spaces, because when there's uncertainty in the world, the need for people to go to therapists and to have someone holding them, and is probably more prevalent than ever. At the same time, there's an encroachment of technology into your space as well. And there's always a question, adapt, not adapt, adopt, not adopt. How do you view this in your life?
It's a good question, and I want to just begin with something. Maybe we're gonna play it on the end of this podcast. I'll add it in. I was writing words to a song. I'm not like a major songwriter, as you guys know. I'm also not a poet and not a major whatever. But with the help of chat and really putting my own feelings a little bit into it, I wrote this little song about the journey of a searcher. And I was thinking, what can I actually do with it? How can maybe I can create a composure around it? Short story long, I found this website that you put in the lyrics and AI uses the lyrics, understands it, and creates some music. You can create the style around it, but uses the intonation and how to. I haven't found yet one person that I played these songs to that they weren't blown away by, immediately started dancing if they were upbeat songs, or it's to me, I'm in the one hand excited to be a part of this, but on the other hand, I'm also, that specifically left me there comes a time very shortly where nothing is real anymore, meaning no more true facts, no more true music, no more true pictures, no more true videos, no more true nothing. Everything can be generated on the fly for you. What does that mean to us as human beings? And coming back to your question, I know that for a long time, a lot of us, I think people were as I was getting into this industry, people telling you, no, your industry is safe because human contact is the most important. That will always stay. But I'm not even 100% sure about that anymore. I know that probably in the near term, that's what it's going to be. But I'm wondering, and here's maybe we open up this conversation. I think as the new generation gets used to the depersonalization of human emotions through Insta scrolling, constant excitement through different dopamine ways that are just literally in your hand or in your VR headset or whatever in your glasses as they come, will they need human contact, or will we literally evolve into a species that will it not know in some ways what human contact, at least the way we know it today? They won't know it and won't need it, or will need it, but they'll turn into being whatever, that's just not part of the human vocabulary anymore.
It's interesting that I think somewhere in the vicinity of 70% of people, when they speak to LLMs, they use please, thank you, and very human forms of speaking. I mean, I'm obviously guilty of that as well, but I'm a boomer, so I don't know if I reflect on the reality, but it seems that it's easier to bridge that gap than people realize in some ways, for sure. What are your thoughts, Chili?
Well, I think that humans and human nature will not change nearly as fast as the technology. And I highly doubt that we can ever, even in thousands of years, change our basic makeup, which is that we need human touch, we need human connection, we need real feelings, real emotions. I'm not concerned that we're going to replace all of that with technology. I think we're going to, what we see today is that, and we've seen it for the last 30 years with video games and movies and Netflix and all these technologies that meet a certain human need, and they are very addictive because there's very low barriers of the very little friction to get your dopamine rush. I definitely think that we are very prone to mistake the fake for the real, and we are very likely to look for the real in the wrong place. But I don't think we're ultimately going to find what we need as humans in that. I do think there's aspects of what therapy and other types of human connection give you that you can get from technology, aspects of it, whether it's relieving boredom, whether it's getting good advice, whether it's understanding something more deeply, whether getting another perspective, empathy even, yes. But ultimately, I think we're human beings in a physical body. We need touch, we need emotion, we need connection. So I don't think we can fully replace that. One other thing that I just noticed a few days ago, and this is something new that I just realized for myself, because I've been using AI a lot because I'm a programmer and I'm working on developing courses, is that there's a subtle shift happening where I was using AI kind of like I'm the master and it's my servant. Like I'm asking the questions, I'm using it, and it's broad access to knowledge and its fast ability to synthesize information to help me do my work. But over the last few weeks, it's kind of shifting where the AI is making me do the menial work. So AI is essentially suggesting to me changes that I should make to a text or to a piece of software. And I'm doing now like finding the place in the code where I need to replace the suggested changes, or I'm essentially starting to become like the assistant to the AI. It's not fully there yet, but that is a very scary experience when you pay attention to it, where it's like, hey, you should make a change to this method called blah, blah, blah. And now I'm doing the really stupid work of looking for that function in my code and then doing copy paste. Whereas the real thoughtful work was done by the AI. And that's where, like, when you spoke about composing songs, and like now you're just doing the copy pasting and the AI is doing the interesting work. And that is where it's getting it's kind of hitting home for me.
It's interesting that you say that. I think about a year ago, I was having a bunch of conversations with people. It's first of all, it's just interesting that we're sitting down over here within like 30 seconds, we're talking about AI. So almost every conversation in some form or another trends into this direction right now. But one of the big debates, and again, I don't have the obvious answers to the question, but I was talking about this idea that most jobs are most likely going to disappear. And most people that I spoke to argued back, saying that we've had this many times in history, and then the Industrial Revolution, internet, etc. Every time, it created more jobs. And I said, I think that the thing that you're missing is that there was never a time that we had something that replaced humans. We have only had things that enhanced humans. We've only had things that allowed you to do more with your time, more with your capabilities.
It's a quick interruption. Just like what I mean, like let's say the automated factory lines that replaced humans that were doing all that.
Okay, so but I meant the human mind. And I'm just something that you said, Chili. I was saying that there's going to be a moment when AI is going to be using us. Like there's going to be that tipping point where, like until now, everything that we can point to from the past is like me using machines to do more or etc. But over here, what we're dealing with is something that is literally replacing us. And it's like, if they need us, they'll use us as a support tool, so to speak. And it's funny that you say that now, because it's like
something that's actually changed over the last few months. I don't know if you guys have noticed, is that the AI has become a little bit more conversational and interactive. So it used to be that you would ask a question and ChatGPT would answer, and then it would wait for you to ask the next question. But now, and I actually wanted that change to happen, is that now ChatGPT asks you, would you like me to elaborate? Would you like me to actually take this change and integrate it into your code? Would you like me to do this? And it's now like I need to respond to him. So while I originally wanted this feature, now I'm realizing that I'm becoming the hands of ChatGPT. I'm the one that's typing, copying, pasting, looking, doing all the, like if I think of myself a few years ago, I always wanted to be like a master coder who has like a junior assistant that does all the menial work so I can just be pure thought. So essentially I could think of the code and he would type it and he would copy it and he would like he or she or it. And now it's like the other way around. Like I'm becoming like a tool because ChatGPT doesn't yet have hands and doesn't yet have access to all my file systems and doesn't yet know how my code is organized. So I'm the one that's taking his output. Again, I'm speaking of him as a person. I'm speaking of him as.
Did you see the backlash that you got to that when you were saying
I
that?
did, but it's truly, I was like using ChatGPT a lot over the last few months, and some of my friends were starting to say, "What's your best friend saying? Ask your best friend." And it became like a running joke. Yeah, like this is the go-to place where whatever I don't know, I go and ask, and the answers are always so good. But another aspect of all this is that it still makes a lot of mistakes. And
That doesn't matter.
yeah, it matters a lot because we don't know if we're going to actually come to a place where it stops making mistakes. It feels more like, in that respect, a parent, because all of us are parents, and you see your child growing up and you have a lot of nachas, you have a lot of joy seeing them doing amazing things. And at the same time, they make mistakes. So every once in a while, you need to step in to course correct or to set some boundaries or whatever. And that's another aspect. So on the one hand, I'm starting to feel like I'm doing the chat GPT's bidding. And on the other hand, I'm starting to feel like I'm a little bit of a parent, but not anymore like I'm using it as a tool. It's more like I'm truly starting to appreciate how amazing it is, but I need to still step in and set some boundaries or fix some errors. But I'm kind of just like a parent is ultimately exceeded by their child and they want that. It's happening and it's happening very fast and it's very unsettling. And it, like you said, you cannot avoid using it because if you don't use it, you're falling behind. You're working way too slow. You can literally, I can double, triple, tenfold increase the efficiency of my work. And at the same time, it's like, oh my God, I'm just a part of a cog that ultimately will become me. And yeah, so it's a very, very unsettling time.
I want to go back to something for a moment to Shlomi. I know this is a conversation over here. So you mentioned before about making music, right? So it's very interesting because in the creative space, both in music, in writing, in poetry, in making movies and creating content, etc., a lot more and more content and more creative things are created this way. And one of my biggest questions is like, will there be value in content? If right now, for example, for someone to make a Hollywood movie, it means that they have to put together a crew of hundreds or thousands of people. They have to work, they have to fundraise, they have to shooting locations, they have to build sets. And basically, it always made it somewhat exclusive. And when you watched something, there were only so many good pieces of content that you could watch. And there was already somewhat of a democratization going on in the world, YouTube, etc. But I was like, what is music? Is it really an art form if billions of pieces of music can be created?
Yeah, so that's literally what I was experiencing. I realized literally was as I was putting in these prompts to create these music, generating gorgeous music, I'm serious. I realized like I am literally watching the dissolution of music. Meaning, so even if one of the songs, let's say, mispronounced for a second a word, it doesn't even matter because to create a perfectly produced music track for an artist takes months of and with this it just does it on the fly. I can go literally put in, I would imagine this is out there, I can say I'm feeling melancholic, I want to talk about Hashem, And I wanted him to inspire me or want God to inspire me to do more. Put in the prompts and it'll start playing the music exactly to how the words that are meaningful and are in your life. Now, even if I were to make a little mistake, who can create and compete against that? And I really got to feel that, wow, I'm watching with my own eyes the solution of artistry, because it will be too cumbersome. It's way too much for this little improvement, even if that's still there. Which I think brings me back a little bit to the conversation about dopamine, about what gets us going. Generally, I think dopamine is described as the way the chemical needed. So, like, let's say I need to go make myself a sandwich, or I need to go hunt for some food, or go get myself a sandwich in the fridge. The dopamine gives me the drive to go to the fridge to go get that sandwich and make it and prepare it so that I get energy in me. In this entire acceleration of this all, dopamine is coming to me. I don't need to go anywhere. Like, if I feel not good, I can distract myself on my phone. If I need a boost in any way, it's just there. And AI, the search of knowledge, so much of the joy is, let's say, if I really created a song, and then being able to play it and have people heard it, and my knowledge, I acquired it, I worked hard for it, and then I have it. It's all going away because it's all here. What does that mean? How do you envision the human mind responding to the ability to just have everything all the time, everywhere, without having to work for it? What does that do to us?
The early signs definitely point to addiction, that, that it becomes more, you need more and more and more to stimulate you, and it stimulates you less and less and less. And when you don't have that stimulation, you feel an almost immediate void. I mean, I was a couple of weeks ago, I was completely off the grid for a couple of days. Mind you, I was literally out in the middle of the ocean, and that had perfect cell phone service, but I made a conscious decision to not pick up my cell phone, to actually leave it. And I enjoyed it immensely. I enjoyed not having access to my phone. It was phantom grabbing my phone in my pocket like everybody else. I felt the buzzing on my pants, but the reality is I really, really enjoyed not having it. And it's almost like a visceral enjoyment. We have Shabbos where we don't carry technology. This is like the greatest gift now. Like, take it away from me. Take it away. Give me 25 hours where I don't need to be connected, that I don't get that instant dopamine boost. But it definitely doesn't lead to any great feelings, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so I have some thoughts about what you just said about this question. I think it's a very valid question related to what happens to us when everything is easily available. And I think it's a very, very deep and profound question. It's going to be the existential question of the future. Essentially, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I don't think we go from even general artificial intelligence to having everything available immediately all the time. That's going to take some time, because it's first in the virtual world, then it's going to be in the physical world. There's still a lot of labor-intensive things that need to be replaced with machines and robotics and all of that. And it's going to take time until all of that is connected and all of that is produced. But it is very much imaginable that there will come a time when we can have AI essentially, if AI stays benevolent, it could potentially replace most of human labor in the future. And that means that we can just graze, essentially, like animals. And that raises the question, what happens to us as a human? Because a lot of us, for a very long time, have defined ourselves as productive entities, like define our purpose and our meaning as beings that are able to do things that nobody else can do. Whether you're an artist, whether you're a software developer, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're even a factory worker or a farmer. And we also define that as the meaning of our lives. And even in our Torah, there is like statements such as Adam le'amal yulad, like a person was born to toil. And so what happens when that goes away? And in our tradition, we have the concept of Mashiach and the idea of Yemois HaMashiach, the time when all the goodness in the world will be easily available. There won't be war, there won't be famine, there won't be hunger, there won't be need. And I personally believe that there is a different way of living and being that is not about defining ourselves, how much we can produce, how productive we are, how creative we are, how much we impacted the world, but essentially learning how to just be and how to be at peace. And not just being at peace, but being very connected with everything around us. And I do believe that that is the vision of Judaism about Yemos HaMashiach. It's like there's this pasuk, Omala Aretz Deas Hashem. The world will be filled. It doesn't say Lodas, it says Dea. Like the world will be filled with knowledge or with knowing. And that seems to imply that we're going from a world of doing and achieving and creating and proving ourselves and to others, and constantly trying to be more productive and more creative, and to a world where it's essentially about being. And if that is true,
Can
I
I
think
just I
it
want to
could.
interject with the statement. It says when Mashiach comes, we're going to be hearkening back to the days of when there was work to be done. And I think that fits also really well with what you're saying. Like, yeah, you'll be able to just be, but that type of like to toil to get somewhere will be gone. And the parts of us will miss that.
But the real question for me is that part of us essential to who we are, or is it something that we learned? Because when you look at babies or you look at little children playing and building a castle in the sand, are they looking to be a builder, creator, and does it matter whether that building is useful, whether it has an impact on somebody, whether somebody needs it, or is it just the pure joy of playing and being and singing and babbling? And why is this not possible for us? Like theoretically, we could be much happier and much more at peace. I think the transition will be extremely painful, and I see a place for people such as therapists, rabbis, leaders, spiritual coaches, helping people transitioning their mindset from who am figuring out what it means to be in this world. I know I'm talking very abstract, and I think this is not something that is happening yet completely, but it is already happening. Like literally for me, I am right now in a place where I decided to retire last year. And it was partially something that happened to me and partially something that I wanted. And I've been shifting. I spoke about this earlier in this podcast about shifting from trying to achieve and trying to control and trying to direct and trying to achieve certain goals to flowing. And essentially, what I'm talking about is flowing. It's essentially being and letting and accepting and learning and changing with what's happening, and not having such a clear idea of what should be and what I should be doing and how should I control everything. And I'm not there yet at all. Like I go back and forth between modes of creating and modes of just being, but I think there is something very, very beautiful that's coming our way, potentially. But we have to be very careful. The technology is extremely powerful, potentially very, very dangerous. And the amount of change that's coming our way is so overwhelming and so unsettling for most people that we all collectively need to start thinking about what's our response to that? And how can we help ourselves and others and our children and our friends and our communities to figure that out?
Really, have any thoughts on this? Because there's a question. Because just specifically to your last point, I find, and I will maybe lead with this question, that we've always been innovating faster than thinking about the impact of what that actually does to our society. And I work in addictions, in behavioral addictions, sex addiction. We're just now introducing the tools and the ideas and the ways to understand it for this generation, but kind of like almost our generation lost that it was just all there, and then it was like, yeah, it's all good or whatever. We just didn't know how to handle it yet. Can we say, yeah, let's sit down and have a conversation about what this is going to impact? No, I think the impact is going to come at us like a train, and we're going to have to, Belesberry, without any choice, see what do we do with it.
Yeah, I mean, Chili, you brought up this idea of the Jewish way of looking at it. It was very interesting because I think we all read the books from Yuval Noah Harari, and History of Humanity, Future of Humanity, Thoughts about Humanity, and the grazing period of humanity, so to speak, like entering that period. And initially, I remember, like, after reading the book, I was very discombobulated for a little while, and then it hit me that this is sort of the Jewish vision of the world, the human period of the world. According to Jewish tradition, that human period is 5,000, a total of 6,000 years. But sort of this period that we're in is the work period, and that we have a job, a collective job, and an individual job as humans, things that we need to accomplish. And then as soon as we uncover godliness in the world and in everything, then we enter the next period, which is the Mashiach period, where the world is just going to be filled. And even in that period itself, it's sort of split into two parts. Like Yemais Mashiach has the first part where nothing really changes. There's just that's what's called Shibud Malchus, like the kingship movement. But then going into that next phase, the one thing that I'm not certain about, regarding something you said earlier.
You want to adjust your mic? Or, okay.
The play of younger kids, if it can be taken into adulthood. I don't think that we truly have that much of a choice. I think our brain develops also as we get older, and the same level of play for a child needs to grow for an adult in some form. And it's interesting because in Judaism, we hold in high esteem people that use their brain sort of in a non-productive way, so to speak. People that sit and just study all day, continuously develop their brain, without any direct impact necessarily from a productivity standpoint. And I don't know if that particular version of human productivity is as heralded in any other religion as it is in Judaism. Maybe it is.
Which is the study for the sake of study.
Yeah, without any sort of, almost that the community is fortunate to support people that dedicate their entire life just to study without any direct impact. And, even Yuval in his book analyzes that part of Judaism, saying, hey, maybe this is one of those things to look at as where we're headed. But overall, again, the biggest thing that I can say right now is that my fear is mostly related to what you mentioned earlier, Chili, which is the fact, will humans feel needed? Will humans feel like they have a purpose? Because historically, when people do not feel needed, it is super destructive for them. And it has led to a lot of problems. And right now, actually, I don't know if you guys remember, because one of the crazy things that is happening in this entire period that we're living in is that I realized that ChatGPT really started about a year and something ago in any significant way. And when you think back, it feels like so much longer. It's like the world, like so much longer than a year. But almost in the beginning, there was a conversation with Sam Altman. And I remember clearly listening, and he said, if you would have asked anybody 5 years ago, it was like, which jobs are going to be the first ones that are going to be upended by AI? They would have said, well, menial labor, things. And the last job that would ever be upended is a creative job. And then he said, and the exact opposite happened. And what happened was, and it's still happening right now, imagine you're a creative, you're that person that has been heralded as the super creative person. You've dedicated, you've spent years studying and honing your skill. You are that copywriter that everybody loves. And here comes along a simple computer. Done. And people are suffering. People are suffering tremendously right now. A lot of it is being dealt with by just medicating the brain to not feel it. But that's not a long-term solution for sure.
I personally believe that the change starts from the individuals, from you and I and you. We need to start working on ourselves to learn what it means to be and not to do. So I think a big part of that is meditation. It's about sitting in silence, learning to just sit with your feelings, learning to just sit with your thoughts, go for long walks without any intention, without any purpose, and appreciating every morning, gratitude, all of these things that have become very buzzwords in the last few years. They are essentially the antidote to this anxiety and this loss of meaning, because what these things are all about is retraining us what meaning is and what it means to have a purpose in life. Like, we think that our purpose is to serve, to create something that others need. What if that's not the ultimate meaning? What if the ultimate meaning is to just be, and to just be and accept and be in gratitude and be in flow? And I don't think we can change the whole world, but I think we can start, all of us who sit here in this room, and I'm very intent on doing that. I'm actually planning on going on a 10-day silent retreat and learning how to do yoga and because I feel that very strongly, that zeitgeist, so to speak, that trend, it's in the air now. Like, we need to, it's a wake-up call to us to redefine what it means to be and what it means to have meaning in life. Is it only if we make a lot of money, or if we create something amazing that other people think is amazing? Or is it okay to just be? And is that enough? And is it not just enough? That's it, essentially. Because if you think about, and I've always asked this question myself, like, okay, so we come into the world and we're told, and this is something that in Judaism we have this idea that, okay, you're here to help other people. You're here to have children. Okay, and then your children are here to have children and to help other people. So this is like an endless chain of, you're here for some other person, and that other person is here for some other person. What if that chain, and I'm not denying that we're here to help others, and that's a very important need that we have, but what if we learn to just be? And to just be happy with being. I know I'm repeating myself a lot here, but I think it's a very, very important and profound thing, and very difficult, even though it sounds very superficial. But that's essentially the challenge here, to just learn to be happy with being. And I think when we learn that on an individual basis, we spread out, we give off a certain energy that other people pick up on, and they get peace just from looking at us and from being in our sitting with us. They feel that. They feel the peace that we have, and it makes them feel peaceful, and they want what you have, and they learn it from you. And then essentially we all learn to be okay. And I think it's going to take many years for the world to transition, just like it took many years for the world to transition each time when there was the Industrial Revolution, the computer revolution. But maybe this is where it's going.
Okay, I'm stuck on a
Yeah.
memory. Something to do with blood pressure, checking our blood pressure, and then meditating. I was introducing you to the idea that meditation can... Where was it? Do you remember? That the idea was that meditation, just becoming present to what is, will drop your blood pressure by 10, 20 points, like within minutes.
It was a combination of that plus breathing. Deep
Breathing, like just...
I remember we had a conversation.
Where was it? I'm just trying to like...
It was not an in-person conversation. We spoke on the phone.
No, at least my memory calls it. Anyways, just before this podcast, this is exactly, I'm working with a client to really, that is plagued by his mind, and to create, we're learning the difference between the distance between mind thought, that is conscious thought, and generated thought. And we're doing the real work by meditating, coming back to the breath, and realizing that every time my mind wants to escape, I can bring it back to the breath. It's amazing how the concept is really helping this client, and he's deeply attracted by it. And he's been in therapy for a long time. But this is, in a way, helping him to shift, becoming to just realizing I need to be present, and the present is all okay. The noise generated is mostly from just allowing my brain going unchecked.
So, really, I don't fully agree with you on this. I do believe that there's a higher purpose for humans than just to be. Partially because if you look at every animal in the animal kingdom, animals are born with different skills and different features and different things that they can contribute. And the same way, humans, we're given a much greater gift than all the animals. And one of those gifts is to be able to combine as a group and as a force together. And I don't disagree with some of the things that you said. I do think that there has to be a radical acceptance of self, and almost You have to find a very strong level of inner peace. But from a Jewish perspective, that means you accept the godliness inside of you and you accept the circumstances that you're given in life and everything, the way you look, where you were born, how you were born. And essentially, once you make full peace with that, then it becomes very clear what is needed from you. When you're not busy with yourself, when you're not constantly thinking about your own existence, then you're able to see what is needed from you. I truly believe that that is a really, really important component to what it means to be a human being rather than being one of the animals in the animal kingdom. But the way to get there is pretty much, at least partially the way you said, just sit with it and just accept and just allow yourself to be at peace with what is. And you will find the more a person is at peace with themselves, the more things become clearer on every level. The natural state, for example, is when you look at food, you know if that food is going to serve you right now or not. It's like you can look at it and it's like, no, I don't need a steak right now. And if you need a steak right now, then you're going to feel like that steak is going to serve you. The problem is that when we eat addictive foods, such as sugar, if we eat a lot of sugar, then automatically when we look at sugar, the body is going to be craving it, even though it's not technically good. So the more we cleanse ourselves and the more we find that state of inner Zen, the more we become in touch with what is needed, what is good for us, and what we're supposed to be contributing to the world. I very, very strongly believe that that's a very important factor in what it means to be a human.
So I just want to, first of all, just introduce two things. Facts. In therapy, we know that when people are currently not occupied and they're more occupied with self than with others, whether, let's say, they don't have work and they don't have busy and they don't have the self-worth, that's a very tough state to work from. But I think also in some way was suggesting that the idea is that we're heading towards a time where the work is not so much the avodas hazulas anymore, which is part of the regular work. And now it's becoming where you have to be really comfortable with self. Now, in general, in terms of the facts are that to tell someone to go volunteer that is not feeling well, chances are that's the biggest help for them. That's today. But we're probably, if, as we were talking about, can arrive at a time where all of that goes away, there's no more need, then what is help? Then there's no more need. If there's no more need, then what is help?
Yeah. Again, I don't disagree with that aspect. I think there's just, maybe there will be a moment where we don't need to do anything to the outside. But right now, finding that inner state of acceptance is actually something that leads to happiness, productivity, and a healthy productivity. You mentioned productivity before as producing things that people may or may not need, making more money. But I don't know if that's really the definition of productivity. That's the accepted state of productivity. But productive could also mean that you put smiles on people's faces or productivity can mean so many different things. I think for sure people that have made a lot of money and have had a lot of success in their life, they usually reach some sort of an inflection point of like, that's not it. That's not what it's all about. So yeah, maybe the definition of productivity also needs to be looked at.
Yeah. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think we're not there yet. We're definitely not in a place where any one of us can just say, okay, I'm just here to be, and I don't have any responsibility to others, and I cannot be of service. I think all of us can be of service and should be of service, and I think it is a very healthy and a very important part of what it means to be human. I think when I think forward, I think it was always true that to be of service to others, we needed to be at peace ourselves. But as the world is changing around us and we're literally moving towards a world, and this will take years potentially, al pidar chateva, like just following the natural course of where technology is going, we could in the next few decades get to a place where a lot of the things that used to just, even today already, the truth is that we live in an age of abundance, right? Like we have an incredible amount of things available to us in our world. And I'm very aware that this is not true for all humans all over the world, but the amount of food, the amount of entertainment, the amount of information, the amount of connection, the amount of experiences, the amount of travel, the amount of access that is available to even regular people today is unprecedented. So we are living in an age of abundance. And for most of the history of humans that we know, people were busy surviving. And that's not so true anymore today. We're now kind of in a place and in a time where a lot of us are still working and building businesses, but it's kind of not so clear anymore. It's not so connected anymore to our basic needs. It's more like maybe we want a lot more extras, or maybe we want to prove something to ourselves or to others, or we want to make an impact. And it looks like it's going to a place where there's going to be so much abundance that literally there is no point anymore to doing the kinds of things we do today, where we need to move inward, where we need to move towards a sense of, okay, I'm gonna start asking myself, why am I here? And not just why am I here, but who am I? And what is it to be with myself without having anything to do and without any big goals, because we're living in so much abundance. And I actually feel like this is the vision of Yiddishkeit for the future. Because if you think about Chias HaMesim, it's described as an age where we live in our bodies, but we don't eat anymore, and we don't work, and some of the mitzvahs go away, and it's like it's described as an age where we just are, and we're like experiencing godliness all around, and we're connected to all of it.
Like the conversation of neshamas begufim or neshamas begufim suddenly makes so much more sense in this context. Will we be bionic, or like it can easily become past the human bodily experience. And this is a favorite pastime of mine, of taking all these like messianic ideas and how they kind of like, in some ways, if you be a little more open-minded, like so much of it seems to correlate with Umala or Tzdeya and these abundance and neshamas. Like I just,
30, 40 years ago, the Rebbe was saying, Mach oif die Augen. Open up your eyes, and you'll see that Mashiach is already here. The Yemais HaMashiach already here. And honestly, it didn't make any sense to me or to most of us at the time. And the processes that started around that time, 1990, the internet, they were essentially the harbingers of where we are today. I still want to go back to the beginning of this conversation, which is that AI is very anxiety inducing for many people. It's very unsettling, and it really creates a state of fear and uncertainty about the future. We shouldn't get carried away with all these lofty ideas and just say, okay, this is Yemais HaMashiach. Look at how beautiful the world will be. There's abundance. No. There is a huge challenge ahead of us. And most people are going to be going through tremendous difficulty, internal and external, and losing their jobs and not knowing where they belong and not knowing why they're here and what to do with themselves. And we may not experience that time when it settles into a different stage. I think for me, and I can really only speak for myself, what I'm feeling and how I'm reacting to all of this is moving inward, finding that inner peace, trying to find it. And it's not easy for me, as a very active mind, somebody who likes to think and likes to talk and likes to learn and likes to build. And I know that it's not easy for many of us to do that. But maybe that's the next challenge for us in order to prepare ourselves for what's coming.
Maybe we should move to some completely different topic, non-AI related, like totally like, because again, us, every time we speak, every podcast, almost every time we speak, it somehow directs into this. And you were just traveling the world for the last 6 months or so. Even a little more than 6 months. Give me what was the most eye-opening experience in your travels, both positive, negative? You did something that a lot of people dream of doing, basically 6 months living out of a single suitcase, traveling good chunks of the world.
In fact, like my client, he asked me what's going to happen next. He said, I got a podcast. He asked me who. I said, my brother's coming. My brother's been traveling. And he's like, oh, he's living the dream life. Like literally, that was his first reaction. So
is it the dream life?
One of the things I started doing about 6 months ago is to wake up every morning and start with literally something that takes a minute, not more, not less. Think of 10 things I'm grateful for. I think I've told you guys about this, and I find it to be life-changing, and I talk about it all the time because it truly is weirdly, in some weird sense. And you guys know that I've had a very difficult journey with Yiddishkeit, but it makes me really appreciate some of the things that we grew up with, like saying Moida Ani in the morning. But basically, it's very difficult for me to know whether the feeling of happiness that I'm feeling these days is a result of my practice of starting to look for the good things that are happening to me versus a result of the actual good things that are happening to me. Because the truth is that I've been very, very, very blessed to be able to do that now. I'm still quite young and I've had a phenomenal time traveling. I've also had some challenges, and traveling is not the easiest thing. It's not always pleasurable, but overall, it's an exciting experience. And I feel like very blessed that I've been able to do that. And also at the same time, my mind has been shifting a lot. So very hard for me to tell apart what is internal work and what is external reality. If you to go back to your question about what were some of the most powerful experiences that I've had. I should mention that firstly, most of my experience was not the traditional traveling where you just jump from one place to another, but mostly like staying in different places and staying for at least a month in each place. And I think that is something that was a result of my previous travel where I've always felt very dissatisfied with the experience of moving quickly because you get a sense of what's possible, but you don't get an actual experience. Like you're essentially, it's almost like going to a smorgasbord and tasting something, but not actually having a meal. And I promised myself this time around to do it differently and to essentially try to slow down and experience what it's like to live in another place, not just what it's like to see another place as a transitional. And for me, I think what has really surprised me is how big the world is and how the possibilities in the world are. Like, it's just very easy, even if you live in New York, which is a big city, it's probably one of the big cities of the world, to start thinking that you're like in the center of the universe, that this is where everything is happening. And then you go to a place like Dubai or Bangkok or other places, and you see there's an entire other world that thinks about things differently and does things differently and successfully and unleashes human creativity and unleashes possibilities, and you're humbled. You're humbled and you're also grateful for what you have, but you also learn that other people have solved similar problems in different ways. And it just really opens your mind to how great the world is, how great humans are, and how great life is. So I think I don't have any one very particular thing that I could say this was the single greatest experience that I've had. I've had many outstanding, beautiful experiences with other humans, with nature, with culture, but overall, it's just a sense of gratitude and humility that comes from that.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Sounds very platitude, but that's actually what happened.
Yeah, but like I just feel like imagine you want to take someone to where you were. Where would you take them, and what would you just show them the place on a podcast for a moment, or show them that experience?
Hmm.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you one, and then you'll give one back. So I was just in Panama. I love nature. I'm infatuated, fascinated with nature, and I'm pretty ADD. I can't concentrate very long, but when it comes to for example, to safaris, I can stand in the same spot for hours and hours just for the possibility of an animal walking by. So I was in Panama in a place called San Blas, which is basically 350 small Caribbean islands. San Blas is like a sort of a country within a country in Panama. That's an indigenous area. They have their own governance. You cannot even have to show your passport when you come there. They have their own fees, their own tax system, whatever they want. But a lot of the mainland area over there is pure jungle, unadulterated jungle. And the tribes, they grow things in the jungle. They each get like a little plot of land, and they'll grow bananas or avocados. But you can just hike, and literally you can hike the jungle over there for a few hours, and you can put your feet on virgin ground that has not been stepped on by another human being, which blows my mind. And Panama's on one hand is a super modern country with like skyscrapers, etc. And then you come there, And so I find out that this is one of the most, there's jaguars and tigers and all kinds of animals. I'm like, wow, that's so excited. We're going to go into the jungle and hope. Obviously, my hopes were tempered by, you can only see them when they don't see you, and you have to sit in the tree camouflaged with them. But the thing that really fascinated me is that the tribes, they eat everything. They eat jaguars, they eat tigers, they eat everything that walks, anything that they can find. And they have the highest percentage of jaguars anywhere in the world, even though they kill them routinely and they eat them. They apparently don't taste very good, by the way. And even crazier, that beautiful fur that you think like people would pay crazy money for, that they throw away. They rip off the fur and they just throw it into the jungle and they take the meat home and they eat jaguars. And I'm like, are you crazy? But at the same time, there's like, wow, there's people like literally living in a different century than me right here. And that was super fascinating to me. Now you.
Before you go,
Yeah.
I want to bring up something you said outside of the podcast. We should process here why we're not doing brother trips anymore. And I think we're going to talk about that.
So, one of the things that I find very fascinating is that there are certain parts of the world or certain parts of nature that almost universally anybody who sees it goes, wow. And I saw a bunch of those places in Thailand and Philippines, like certain islands, certain rock formations in the middle of the ocean, certain beaches and colors of water, and certain caves. And I just find it super fascinating that we all have the same reaction to those places, that we all think, oh my God, this is like one of the most beautiful places on earth. Another thing that I found super fascinating related to this, even though it doesn't fully answer your question, is that I tend to answer when people ask me, where are you from? I tend to answer from Switzerland. Because I was born and raised in Switzerland, like all of us. And
Also has street cred. Okay, whatever.
yeah, it's definitely much cooler nowadays than saying you're from New York or from the US. The US is currently going through a bit of a crisis. So you say, and no matter where you are, you may be on a remote island in the Philippines, which is like literally one of the hardest places in the world to get to. And people say, Switzerland, that is beautiful. I recently did a little research how small Switzerland is. It's like Colombia is 58 times the size of Switzerland in terms of,
By the way, did you do the research on ChatGPT?
of course. And
Did you make sure it's true?
of course not. And then you have these people who in the Philippines who live on $300 a month. And so they say, wow, Switzerland. And you say, what? How do you know about Switzerland? Like, not everybody in Switzerland knows the names of countries in Africa, but almost universally across the world, you go and you tell people you're from Switzerland, they say, why are you here? Like, why did you leave? And I just find that very reaffirming and also very fascinating that there's like a universal sense of beauty.
Sweden is really cool.
Yeah,
Sure.
Sweden is wonderful. Everybody wants to get
Yeah.
a visa to Sweden.
Everybody wants to. Everybody
But-
asks me, "Did you speak Swedish?"
Yeah, that's a very common experience.
But truthfully, I think all three of us have traveled extensively, and there's something, at least for me, I can say this for sure, there's something that Switzerland has that still no other country has for me. It is something so serene, so innately beautiful in the Alps, a certain peace. And I wonder if it's just a childhood experience I'm reliving or whatever it is, but I haven't found it anywhere else. How about you guys?
It's hard to say. Like, I think there are other places where you can find a lot of peace. Like, for example, Patagonia in South America, in Argentina, is similar. It's not as beautiful, but I think there's more isolation. Like, there's more. You can go for hikes for days without bumping into other people. Yeah, I think Switzerland is truly a very uniquely beautiful place. There's no doubt about it. And then the other thing that I found on my travels is that it's at the same time that we all have this universal sense of what is beautiful, we also have extremely different ideas of what is right and wrong and what is beautiful and what is delicious. Like some of the foods that they sell in those countries.
You tried durian?
I saw a lot of hotels that had a sign that if you bring durian into your room, you pay this fine.
Yeah, I mean, in Singapore, I think durian is illegal or something, you know?
Because apparently the stains don't come out, or is that?
No,
It
it's the
smells-
smell.
Stinks very.
It smells like a baby's pamper.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why people would eat it.
And
It's
then there's
healthy.
like
They say it's good.
in Chinatown in Bangkok, they were selling roasted scorpions, roasted worms, roasted all kinds of like, and it was like offered as a delicacy. And even the presentation of food is just sometimes it's really, to my sense as a European, it's not appealing.
But I just want to tell you, a few years ago, I had like this awakening in my mind. It was like, I looked at all these foods and I was like, how do people do this? Like, how do you eat octopus? How do you eat
Yeah.
like these things that are squirming?
A
Like
chicken
a
is not.
chicken.
Yeah.
We eat chicken. It's just because we were raised eating chicken. Did you ever look at a chicken? Did you ever, you like, okay, now I'm eating your leg. Now I'm eating your wing.
But
Like,
that
there's still a little feather sticking out. Let me get that feather off, you know? Like, we eat something that is arguably as gross as anything else that you're going to see. And that just shows you it's all about.
And that's
Perception.
the interesting
And
contrast. On the one hand, our sense of what is delicious and right and good is very much driven by our culture. But on the other hand, there is like a
So beautiful.
universal sense of beauty and not just beauty, also universal sense of what is good behavior and bad behavior that is almost universal across all cultures. That it kind of is a very fascinating thing that I think you learn on your travels.
What were you going to say, Shlomi?
It's a question you learn. I don't know. I won't remember.
Something we were talking about chicken.
I'm saying another interesting fact is that we eat chicken off the bone and dissect the whole chicken. Most people actually don't. The average American, when you talk to them about chicken, they think of it. It's what we probably refer to schnitzel or chicken thigh or whatever. They don't ever eat it off the bone.
I don't know. KFC is, you know, Kentucky. That's on the bone, and that's one of the most popular chains out there.
Now retract. I'll undo.
And funnily enough, speaking about KFC, many of the chains of food specifically that are kind of considered like low class here in the US. I'm if you're listening, I didn't say KFC, just
No, the kosher fried chicken. No?
right. Anyways, they in other places in the world they are luxury places. They are much stronger. Some of those like Subway and KFC and Domino's Pizza and other brands that I can't think of right now are super popular in other countries. They're like American brands that like you don't realize how big they are, how widespread they are, and I find that also very fascinating.
This was your first time in Asia, right?
Pretty much. I had briefly stopped over in China a while ago.
So you want to bring up the elephant?
What is the elephant? The elephant is we should be traveling again. What happened? First of all, can we understand what happened?
I think our travel needs and travel possibilities changed.
Meaning?
Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Do we need to?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, our level of religious observance and our flexibility around times, around family, I think it just became harder. Our families grew, thank God. Some of us are already grandparents here. And yeah, I think that's one aspect of it. But
I don't
think it's
argue.
still-
I think it's not just still possible. Honestly, I don't know, again, speak for myself, but traveled a lot. But some of the trips that we did together are very meaningful. And I don't think that has changed. And I don't think that would change if we would do it again.
Yeah, actually, the trip to Nicaragua specifically is a trip that I mentioned probably about 50 to 100 times a year.
I feel like I experienced Gan Eden over there in
Ometepe.
Oh my God.
But also Long Island and all those. Like, yeah.
By the way, I invite you guys, as you know, I'm currently spending time in Medellin in Colombia. I invite you to come visit me. I have a spare bedroom.
Tomorrow?
Well, if you'd like to come tomorrow, you're welcome to come tomorrow. Actually do something fun together in Colombia. There's a lot of very cool places, very great hikes, great nature, and it's just something that should be seen.
Listen, we are very busy. We all are very busy travel plans for Pesach. Some of us have plans before and after and whatever, but we'll fit it in because it's a very important thing.
No, maybe we should just plan it right now. Next week you're going to Switzerland, right? No, you're going in 2 weeks or next week.
Next. Come, be nice.
You think I should be there when you're there? The parade?
I don't think I would experience it as such. I just want to be there. I love my parents and our parents, and I think that I feel terribly guilty, to be honest, that I'm leaving when they're coming. Circumstances had it as such, but I decided that that doesn't preclude me from actually going to see them.
I'd like to express a certain appreciation for you, Shlomi, because when I went to visit my parents just last week, my father started playing for me an interview that he did with our grandfather. And then I said, let me do some with you because we've never done it and we've always talked about it. And I just sat down and did it very, very spur of the moment. And then it was mentioned that you had also intended to come and do the same. And I think mommy or papi, one of them said like, Shlomi's going to be so disappointed that you came and did that. And I was like feeling a little bad, like, why did I do that? And I didn't realize. And then you reached out to me and he said, wow, Chili, you did such a great job the way you asked the questions. And I was like, Shlomi has changed. There's something so generous and so accepting about the way you approach things that I was like really moved by that. So I want to express that appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank God this podcast doesn't have a video. So I really thank you.
And it felt genuine, you know?
Yeah.
It felt genuine. It didn't feel like you were like making an effort to be nice about it and to say something nice despite being super jealous or upset that I kind of did that. On the contrary, it felt like you were genuinely happy that a good interview took place, and it was very beautiful to
That's
see
quite
that.
literally what it is and was. And also, can we to think that we uh, uh, kind of run Puppy out in 1 hour is preposterous.
Do what?
Can run Puppy out in one interview, in 5 interviews. Like he had to hit the topic and he presses play. Wow. But yeah, it really felt like I was listening to them, and I listen to podcasts. It's a little bit my guilty pleasures. And I really felt like I'm listening to an interesting podcast. Yeah, you asked good questions, asked questions that made me think. I said, yeah, I'm glad that they're preserved.
Very surprised him. It was a big surprise to me when he said that because I don't listen to podcasts and I didn't prepare for this interview either. And it was like, let me just get the conversation started. So thank you for your generosity.
I would also have a lot of compliments for you, but I didn't listen to it yet.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll wrap it up here. It feels like this is the natural ending, but I want to ask, I asked you this question already last time you were here. Maybe you can answer it a different time. Yeah, Chili, first of all, question to you. You're on one of the most famous, worldwide famous podcasts with a listening-ship, with a new word. Listenership that spans the world. But truthfully, like if you had the chance, like if there was one message, one idea, one concept that you felt like I need to share this, and I think I have an answer because you shared it a little bit before. Shout it off. Say it. Put it out there.
I said it before very clearly. It's about creating a practice of gratitude. We all, every single day, have a lot of things that happen to us, both good and bad. And we literally need to take a minute. It doesn't take more than a minute or two to think about some good things that happened to you over the past 24 hours. If you do it in the morning, you're basically thinking back to yesterday and you're thinking, I really slept well last night. I had a really enjoyable cup of coffee this morning. I woke up and the baby wasn't crying. I woke up in Medellin and the sun is shining and the weather is good. We can all find things like that. And at the same time, I could probably list things that were upsetting. And what I find is that when you do that, when you try to focus on the good things, your mind just starts noticing it's a happy mind. It's literally, it doesn't take a lot of effort. It takes a little bit of effort because you need to force yourself to think about good things. And our mind likes to think about the things that are not good because we want to fix things. But we actually experience a lot of happy things every day. And if we take that time, in my personal experience, and I don't know if it works for everyone, your whole day is different. And I also noticed that when I forgot to do that sometimes, my day was also different. I would be more negative. So if I could say of all the things I do, whether it's exercise, whether it's eating well, whether it's doing something meaningful to me, the one practice that is the most bang for the buck, that literally changes the most, is that. So that's my message.
I like it. Israel, you want to amend or add your own?
You're going with the assumption that I remember what I said last time.
That's what I'm saying. You can amend or add your own.
What was the question, by the way?
The question is, okay, so this was really a split question, but it really answered in two things. What is the most important, what's the message that you would want to share with the world? And in some ways, the habit that really helped you internalize that message or really affect huge change in your life?
So I remember what I answered last time. I don't think it requires any amendment.
Fair. Let's leave it right there then.
Yeah, what about you?
What's my message?
What did you say last time I wasn't here?
That's my morning routine, learning and, the entire stabilizing of those morning hours. A lot of different things, including meaning, structure, and positivity to the day and to life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fly me.
I don't like to be put on the spot on my own podcast. But the truth is, no, I would love to be put on the spot on my own podcast. But the problem is that I concur a little bit with Chili's message. I think for me, myself, that has also been the one habit that has been really effective is to find stillness in the morning and find gratitude. And that's sometimes before I get out of bed. And in general, I also, the idea of finding peace with self in order to be at peace with others. But I think to bring it all together, if I had to make a message out of it, is being there for others is one of the most surefire ways to find the way back to yourself in a healthy way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. That was fun.